Good evening, all. Thank you for joining Sri Lanka Salesforce Virtual Saturday, Salesforce Saturday. And today we are having Gavin Britto. Gavin is the founder of Clear Cloud, and also he's the leader of Washington DC user group. He's a very good friend of me, and also even he has a different name, but he's a Sri Lankan. And so Gavin, you can share your screen and get started.
Sure. Thanks for that introduction, Chamil. Yeah, like Chamil mentioned, I'm a Sri Lankan. I think යමත් තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් කියන්න මම සිංහලෙන්ම තේරුම් කරලා දෙන්නම්. කිසි ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. I got into Salesforce about 5 years ago. I started as a developer and then moved into the programmatic side of Salesforce, and then found that the declarative tools were a lot friendlier and faster to deploy. So as a result, I started using the declarative tools more than the programmatic side of Salesforce. And I've worked with a lot of nonprofits and higher education institutions. So that is my vertical, the nonprofit starter pack, and the HIDA package from Salesforce has become my strong point. So in front of your screen, you may notice that I also have my co-leader, Guha, who's not here today, but he's actually one of my good friends and mentors who got me to use flows instead of using code. So that's why I have him on this slide to make sure he gets the credit for converting me into a declarative developer. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is Lightning Flows? It used to be called Visual Flows. It's perfect for executing logic, interacting with Salesforce, and you can even call an Apex class from your flow. If the flows don't have the functionality that you need, you can write the functionality in an Apex class and then call it in, which is really neat. You can also call a flow from your process builder. So we'll get to that. We have an example. I have created an example today. When I get to the demo portion, I will show you how that's done. Flows can also be used for interacting with your users. For example, when you can create a flow to onboard your new employee, you can create a new employee flow. So if he has any checklist items, for example, if he needs to take trailhead badges, you can create a flow for him to go through those items from start to end. So the new employee has a seamless interaction. You can do guided UIs. A good example for that is companies are using this for their call centers. You can automate your call center script for selling products. For example, you can create a flow if a sales rep on the call center wants to sell, let's say, phone packages. You can create a flow to select what kind of phone package, and then based on what they select, you can give them options on how to upsell products on that phone package. You can time your flow to do timed executions. That will be covered in our demo as well, and triggers. So why is it not popular? Why is Process Builder? Sometimes people use Process Builder over flows because flows don't have much resources on error handling. However, I did put in the chat window a resource for debugging your flows, but still, even though they have a debugging option, it's not good for error handling. There are limitations. At the end of the presentation, I will provide those limitations to you. There are a number of the number of executable elements are not as much as when you use Apex code and process builder. You're unable to do too many manipulations with the date field with flows. So that's another drawback. And of course, the flow designer has limitations on the UI. You can't write, so far, as far as I know, you can't add CSS to the flow UI. But when would you want to use it? You'd want to use it when admins want to control the process logic. You'd want to use it when you want to reduce dependencies on your IT team, which is the case with a lot of nonprofits. They don't have a budget for IT, so they would bring on consultants to develop something that they can maintain, and that's when we recommend flows as an option. When you know the end of the flow logic, so this is a very important part. You have to know the flow from start to end. If you have any open-ended portions in your logic, you may end up in an infinite loop if you don't know the end. So it's very important to know the flow from start to end before you implement it. You can invoke quick actions. For example, you can, in the example of a call center rep, you can have quick actions to, if a rep selects a certain kind of package, you can get, have a quick action to do a fast lookup of packages that you can upsell. We'll talk about fast lookup elements in the flow in our demo. Again, guided UIs without Visual Force code, that's going to be covered as well. You can time your flows, you can delay it, and quick development of process functionality. All right, it's demo time. So we pull up our org. So this is our use case. So this is the sandbox org for the Christian Broadcasting Network. What they do is they are a nonprofit that helps other nonprofits to promote their cause. So for example, recently there was a hurricane. The Christian Broadcasting Network got a bunch of donors to donate, and they had a specific project for that hurricane, a specific account. So how they use Salesforce is they use the donations, which is basically opportunities. They rename donations to opportunities. So donors can donate online. Then they have a website that's connected to Salesforce through Jitterbit. So donors can donate online. This is Debbie Butler, a donor, donates online, and then they see the donation in the background, in the back end. And the donation came from their campaign, the December campaign. But what they want to track is they want to track where the money is going to. That's what this fund code means. This fund code means the project number. So here, this fund code value comes from a child record. And the child record is the fund code allocation. Now, this is not a master detail relationship. But even though it's not a master detail relationship, we found a way to do a roll up of the fund code 3401 to the parent object. So I actually asked the same question from an intern who I was hiring. I asked him, how do you do roll up summaries on lookup relationships? And he said, oh, you can't do it. Well, that was not the answer I was expecting. Sure, I mean, you can't do it because you can only do roll-up summaries on master detail relationships. But the correct answer that I was looking for was you can use Visual Flow and Process Builder to do a roll-up on a lookup relationship. There's also a product called Rollup Helper. It has 3 roll-ups for free. you go. Rollup helper. It has 3 rollups for free. You can also do declarative rollups with this. It's in the App Exchange. It's a very powerful tool. It says free, but you only get 3 for free. After the third one, you have to pay. You can also use DLRS. This is an open source project on GitHub. I'd be a little careful using this. We use this at the Christian Broadcasting Network to do declarative rollups, and it messes up a lot of the ETL processes you have going on in the background, because the Apex code is not very efficient. So the rollups take a long time to populate, especially if you have a large org and you have a lot of DLRSs running in the background. So not recommended, but it is a tool for small. If you have 1 or 2 rollups, it's okay to use this. But if you have an org with a lot of requests to create rollups, okay, no questions so far. Okay, feel free to ask your questions in the chat window, and I will answer them as they come. So this is another tool, DLRS. On rollups. So what we are going to do is we're going to run through an example of how to do rollups on a lookup relationship. So you saw the donation record, and now we want to take the fund code allocation, which is I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Back. Trying to access the tab, but it's covered by my Zoom by my Zoom. Okay, that's it. So back to the donation. So we want to get this fund code allocation to roll up to the donation. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our flow, and we're going to do a fast lookup for the fund code allocation. Oh man, I can't seem to get to. Oh, perfect. All right, that's better. All right. Here we have a fast lookup. So basically, what this lookup is doing. If I hit the edit. So CBN is using opportunities as donations. So it's looking up the donation record, and the fund code on the donation. So let me go back here. This is the fund code field. All right, let's go back there, and it's saving that fund code as a variable, like this var fund code. So whatever you put in there, it saves it there. And as you can see some of the basic programming concepts of object-oriented programming. It's really cool that Visual Flow can manage that. And then what it does is you whatever the value you have in that, it takes the value, and you can assign that value. You can assign that value here under assignments. So what it's doing is this fast lookup fund code allocation, which is this value here, the 3401 on the child record. It's taking that value and it's assigning it to here, this assignment. I want to make sure I haven't lost anybody. Does anyone understand that point? So whatever the value that comes here, it takes this value and it assigns it here. Okay, let's see. Okay, good. Thanks, Lyro. And then what it does is, if there are other fund codes, for example, if I want to go here and if I want to add another fund code allocation, if I want to manage allocations, so this page, and let's say I want to add another one. I want to do 0, 0, 3, 4, 6. No. So I want to break this up, $10 a piece. I want to put it. So now I want to put this donation into 2 projects. I want to put $10 of this donation into the hunger strike and $10 into a general fund. So because we have a loop in our visual flow, it will loop through all the fund codes. It will loop through all the fund codes and assign those fund codes here into this assignment variable. So that's what this this loop is doing. It's finding all the fund codes. We have a loop variable. So where I actually declare that variable in here. See the fund code text. Specify which of the record fields to save in the variable. So that's the field. You have to specify that. And then it loops. And this concatenation here is basically, it concatenates, if you have multiple accounts, it concatenates those fund code accounts one after the other with a comma separator. So let me go back in there. You may have noticed there's a comma here. That's just the comma separator at the end, this comma here. So, and then it updates, at the end of the loop, it updates this field. Now you can see, because I created 2 fund codes, 3401 and 3406. It did a comma separation and added the 2 fund codes. So this is one way you can use Visual Flow to do a roll-up of child objects on 2 lookup relationships. So now this is not really the end. From somewhere, I mean, we haven't specified what's the criteria to fire this roll-up, right? So this is just only half the project. The other half of the project is we need to go into Process Builder and create a process to call this flow. So when I went into Process Builder, I created a process here called update FA code, and you would fire this whenever a fund code allocation is created or edited. So on update, there's no criteria. Just fire the workflow rule. You would call this flow on update of the fund code allocation. So anytime there's update to it, we call this flow, and this flow will activate whenever there's a change to a specific whenever there's a change to a specific opportunity on the NPSP allocation. Basically, that's the fund code. You would see this would activate, like this whole flow, and that's what was happening here. So if I, for example, I make a change, I say, hey, I want to put this money into a different to a different fund. I would go in to manage allocations. say, hey, I want to change this to 3403. I think there is an account called 3403. There isn't, then it'll give me an error. Yep, back to school. So it changed that to 3403. And that all that happened because we had this process builder. This process builder is a crucial piece. Without it, the flow is just sitting there doing nothing. So this is a end-to-end use case on how you can use flow and process builder to save your client time and money on using a developer. And your client can actually go in here and make these changes themselves. If they want to change the criteria, your client can always go in and change the criteria without being a coder or a programmer. Also, because this is scheduled, there's less usage on your org. So that's another benefit of having a declarative to take a declarative approach rather than a programmatic approach. Because the tool Rollup Helper, it's great. It also has declarative functionality, but it's not free. It's quite expensive to non-profit clients. So to go back to our slide, what are some of the best practices? So again, we got to plan our steps before we build, because you'll end up spending a lot of time if you don't plan it, like redoing and reconfiguring your flow. The resource I posted on the chat is very good for debugging your flow when you're planning. Let's say halfway through, you're finding a lot of issues with your flow. The flow has a debug tool, and I'd like to share this clip with you on how it is being used. So here he's using it for adding a lead to a campaign. So that's a common error that I get a lot as well. All right, so I thought he used the debugging tool to figure that out, but that was a very easy one to figure out. But the debugging tool, we may have to do a separate session just for this, for the debugging, because it's quite a long process to go through in one day. But Safe Harbor, there are a new debugging functionality being developed by the product team for Visual Flow, because one of the drawbacks is there isn't error handling or ways to find out where your flow is struggling right now, but they are coming up with features to help you debug logs and stuff for flows. And this article is a good starting point. Let's see, you have a question. Sure. So the logs. You can always go to your logs. You have to first make sure to set your logs up before you start your flow process, right? So that's a very good question. When you go to your logs, before even you start your flow development, like set it up. Like set it up before you start. In your setup under environments, you go to debug logs. So you can set up your logs with a start date and end date. You can set it up for you as a user. I'll set it up for me, Gavin Britto. And if I'm going to be working on this for a couple of days, I would set that. And this is the level. This is probably a question that Guha can answer better, but he's not on the call today. So let me see if he joined. No, actually, Guha didn't join the call today. But to explain the levels, this is already set by Guha. I'm trying to remember how he set this. So once this is set, you can whenever there's an error, you can go back to these logs and always monitor your it's disabled. So you go in here and you can I think a better person to prepare a presentation on this is Guha. So we'll probably have to do a part 2 on how debugging is done using these logs, because it's not something that I'm quite knowledgeable on. So this, I try to pull this off on with the limited knowledge I know, but this is a really good question. Like, this will help you a lot in finding where your errors are happening. Good. Is there another question? I'm going to take a note on this and I'll get back to you, Lahiru. And okay. Now, and back to the limitations. So we have a maximum number of maximum number of flow versions. So you can create up to 50 versions of your flow. Maximum number of executed elements run at a time is 2000. So that basically it means you can, like, once you reach the 2000th element, your flow is done. So you got to be careful with the batch size of your DLRs. I mean, of your roll-ups on your flows. Let's see. We have a question. You don't need to set this. You just have to be cognizant of how many elements your loops are running through. So if you know for a fact that there's more than 2000 records that are going to be in this loop, then flow is not a good option for that use case. Maximum number of active flows per org. For enterprise edition, you can do up to a 500. Maximum number of flows and processes per org. You can have 1,000, but you can only activate 500 at a time. Maximum number of flow interviews. So basically, interviews are flow actions. You can schedule, you can schedule them. You can schedule up to 30,000. They just can't fire all at once, of course. You have to schedule them to fire at different times because we are in a multi-tenant architecture. Maximum number of flow interviews that are resumed or groups of scheduled actions that are executed per hour. Again, you can schedule 1,000 per hour. Maximum number of relative time alarms in flow versions, schedule based on a field value in a process. So, for example, status, like you can have a flow activate on a certain status value in your opportunity, for example. So you can do up to 20,000 of those when statuses change. So those are some of the limitations to keep in mind as you architect your flow. So you can always contact us if you have any questions. Lahira, I'm going to come back to you with an answer. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. If you are Facebook friends, that's great. Just let me know. I'll come back to you with an answer. Guha is also a really good resource. These are our blogs. You can also follow our blogs. We have some of the work that we've done on our blogs. We are here for a resource to you. Anytime you're considering using Flow instead of code, feel free to reach out to us. We are here to support you, and I'm always happy to help our fellow Sri Lankan user group community. And I'm planning to be in Sri Lanka and look forward to seeing you guys in person at some point.
Yeah, that's great. And Gavin, I have a question. So suppose we are getting an error or fault in the middle of the flow when it is executing. So how can we get notified on that particular fault?
Oh, good question. So what's really neat is I'm unable to access those error messages, but what happens is when you get a fault, you get an immediate email notification to your inbox with the interview that failed. An interview is basically the action that caused the error, which is very helpful because it pinpoints where to go and where to look. I hope I've given some guidance on where to go if that happens.
Got it. And also, can we use these flows with visual force? I mean, when we are developing the visual force pages.
Oh, yes. So one of the clients wanted to bring this flow or not this one, but a specific flow as a like call it in a Visualforce page? Yes. So basically, there's a Visualforce tag where you can bring these flow screens. So if you have, for example, you have these user interface screens here, you can create one of these screens as a Visualforce page. So when you create a Visualforce page, you can call this screen in your Visualforce page, and then it'll activate the flow from that screen onwards. That's a good question. I'm very optimistic that in the future, a lot of the Lightning pages will have flows in the side panels to automate, like how to close the opportunity for a sales rep, or to automate how to onboard a new employee on their Lightning app builder page. So you can always have these flows not just on a Visualforce page, but also on a Lightning app builder page as well.
Yeah, actually, that was the next question I was going to ask.
See, I can read your mind too.
So guys, is there any questions?
Hi, Gavin. This is Lahru. Can you guys hear me
It's
clear and loud?
it's quite scratchy. I can hear you, but your voice is breaking up.
All right. How about now?
Oh, that's better.
Not clear.
That's better.
Cool. Just a quick question. This is Lahru, by the way.
Hey,
Yeah. Good to know that you're Sri Lankan, and good to have a session with you guys. Thanks for that.
how are you?
So, Gavin, just quick question. So, you have in your demo, you had the process builder, right?
Right.
And within process builder, you triggered the flow. So,
Right.
how about the bulkify? Right? If you have like, for example, say if you have opportunities like multiple opportunities will be inserted via, like, say, for example, the API callout, like 100 records to be inserted via API callouts, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
how that bulkifying thing going to happen? How that flow going to work with process builder? Like, I know for the fact that process builder is not quite supporting for the bulkifying. So for scenarios
Right.
like that, how what is your recommendation, and how it's supposed to work?
So one way you can do is instead of doing an immediate action, you can do a scheduled action. So let's see. Um, well, scheduled actions are not. I'm not using scheduled actions here, but when you, but are you familiar with scheduled actions in Process Builder?
Oh yes.
Yeah, so you can schedule those actions to go off instead of go off immediately. That's one way you can do it. I'd have to speak with Guha about if there are other ways where you can set a time limit for all of them to fire.
Okay.
But that's one way you can limit the usage in your org by scheduling action to go at a certain time after a certain time.
All right. So what you're saying is, even though we inserted as a bulk, it still executes as expected, right?
Yes, it executes as expected at a given time.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So because like we kind of came across like situation like that, we couldn't execute as expected the bulk records.
Right.
So we have like forget about every process builder and flows, and like stick with the trigger and the Apex classes.
Right.
So just wanted to check with you how it, if it is gonna support that as well.
No, that's another good question to research, because it's a common challenge. And I don't know if you have posted that question on the success community. There's a flow group actually online on success.salesforce.com, and
Right.
those guys, that group is monitored by the product team. So it's a
Okay.
good question to post there as well, because that's an issue that they haven't resolved yet.
Right. Okay. Cool. Just another question. So I have been experiencing the fact that like for the most of the orgs, we have been using the Apex code together with process builders and flows.
Right.
So when there are errors, so it's really hard to kind of capture those errors via log files and stuff.
Yeah.
And also we have experienced the fact that okay, if the process builder triggers a certain DML operation, and then after that the triggers will be executing, and then based on the triggers and the same process build is executing, and after the process builder then the flows are executing, stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's go on and on and on and on.
That's why in the beginning I said you have to know your flow from beginning to end.
Right.
You have to plan it before you start. Otherwise, that's what's going to happen to you. Like it happens to me
Right.
if I didn't plan it and I just had a half-hearted effort. Next thing you know, you're triggering things that trigger other things.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So that is the thing, right? So do you guys have like combined Apex classes together with the flows in your environments by any chance?
We did it. So again, we didn't plan it that well, and it started triggering other upon updates. It started triggering other other flows and other actions. So like
Exactly. Yeah.
you need to know the order of actions, plan it in advance before you go with that solution.
Right. Okay. The
I mean,
planning,
that's the
right?
difference
Planning is the must.
between an administrator and an architect, right? So if you want to move above from being just a Salesforce administrator and an architect and to an architect, like you have to be able to foresee things like that. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm there yet, but
Right.
still getting out of that mindset of being just a administrator and learning about these foreseeing these pitfalls in the future.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So
I think you're on
what
the
we
right
ended up.
track. You're on the right track, right, to get there. So you're thinking about these things in advance already.
Yeah. So yeah, what we have done was like we ended up with like from the Apex classes we capture okay for this particular event is coming from the process builder or a
Yeah.
workflow rule or flow. So
Yeah.
that is how we ended up with. So now it works, and so far no complaints from the customer as of now. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gavin.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
your
You're
time.
welcome. Yeah.
Cool.
Is there any other question for Gavin?
I mean, I'm curious to know who are the customers in Sri Lanka that are using Salesforce? Do we have Sri Lankan customers, or are they all out, abroad?
In my scenario, all are US based customers.
Okay.
This is Firos. We are struggling to break through the first customer actually.
Okay.
There are a couple of local customers like Mass Holdings.
Uh-huh.
And if I recall, yes, Mass Holdings is the largest user, which is part of Chamil group. They are during their initial implementation and till they joined with theirs work. Other than that, now of course there is a good focus to build up local customer reference.
Uh-huh.
Representing Cybersoft, we are also Salesforce partner, and Chamil on the other hand, they are also targeting local market. So hopefully we can see some progress in the market.
Yeah, I mean, when I spoke to Salesforce's regional Asia Pacific regional vice president, he said that they are coming up with a new price point for local customers in these emerging markets. So I don't know if you guys are getting better prices than us.
Well, the emerging market prices are already there on the card, but still that emerging market prices are not sufficient for us.
Right.
They have come up with something special, very special, because their emerging market is India. So
Right.
if you see the volume of India market and Sri Lanka market is totally different.
Right.
They always compare with India, so that's not going to work out here.
I see. Okay.
They have to work out something very special. They have to see the pattern how Oracle, Microsoft, IBM have succeeded in this country, and draw attention to the economy also. I mean,
yeah.
At times, Oracle, they used to come up with 80 to 90% with the list price discount to close a deal out here.
Right.
Can you imagine?
Wow. Wow.
Most of the cases, the all big deals are closed at almost 80 to 90% of the discount.
Wow. And another thing they haven't quite looked into in Sri Lanka is all the universities and both private and public, they're still using like homegrown solutions for their
That's
application
exactly
management.
the SAP. How there is another use case for them. They have to learn how SAP has succeeded in this country.
Yeah.
We have
I lost you. Are you still there?
I think we lost.
Oh man, I really wanted to hear the rest of that
yeah,
comment.
it's close to 50 customers SAP users in this country.
Yeah, yeah.
So the population has grown up heavily when started. I mean, when they started enabling the local community. So the training is very important. Salesforce, I believe, we have.
Oh, we lost him again.
Yeah. And also, Gavin, there's another customer. It's called Lanka Freight Forwarding. So they are using ELF. They are using Salesforce.
Okay.
But I think partner is our. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the partner is outside from Sri Lanka. I think it's a US partner.
Oh, okay. That's sad that they're going outside of Sri Lanka to get Salesforce implemented when you guys are here.
I think it has done. I think it was done last year or before last year. I think early last year, because actually Firuz and their company, they have organized one customer success meeting. So in that meeting, there was that success story
Okay.
brought by
Yes,
Salesforce.
Expo Lanka.
Expo, yes,
There was
ELF.
one more.
Got it.
Yeah. And Expo also, it didn't grow up. No, it's just they started with some 30, 40 user licenses.